Hi guys! I was incredibly excited to see the interest that all of you have shown for the videos that I initially posted to my channel. They weren't meant for any kind of audience, they were just something that I kind of improvised for a friend of mine. Um, but I'm super happy to see that so many people have an interest in rope, have questions, they want to know things. I'm going to start off by saying that I'm going to try to update this channel as often as I can. I welcome all sorts of comments in the section below, so just if you have any kind of questions, please ask them, but do try to be polite. Anyone who is trying to troll or be rude or insult other users or myself, I'm going to delete those comments. I want this to be a channel, a space for learning, a channel dedicated to all those passionate about rope. And hopefully it's gonna help you guys out. I'm gonna also make a disclaimer by saying I by no means claim to be an expert in rope or bondage. I am just someone who has done quite a bit of rope along the years, mostly as a model but also as a rigger. I think I've gathered quite a bit of information that could be useful for you guys. If you have any kind of questions that I personally cannot answer or don't know the answer to, I will go ask somebody who might be able to give me the solution to the problem that we're facing, and this way I also get to learn some new stuff, which is really exciting. I'm gonna try to mostly focus on the models and the model's perspective. The reason why that is because a lot of times the model's perspective isn't quite taken into consideration. You sort of get used to this perspective of the model just being like a pretty doll that just needs to sit there and be pretty and look nice and smile, and that's it. But it's really important that the model has information herself or himself, not only because they can better communicate with their rigger and explain what is going wrong, if they feel that something is wrong, if they notice that something was not done quite as well as it could have been. It also makes you a better asset for your rigger. So for example, if you can provide, if they're struggling with something and you can provide an answer because you already have watched videos and you've done some stuff as well, you can be extremely helpful to your rigger. I also quite honestly believe that everyone can do rope, so do not be discouraged by other people's opinions, by your own size, or if you think you're not pretty enough for rope. Everyone can have fun in ropes. That being said, I'm going to choose this first video to talk about length of rope, thickness of rope, and the kind of rope you should be using. Take any kind of advice that I give you with a grain of salt. I do not by any means have all the answers to all the rope questions. I speak from my own experience. I will try to provide the reasons why I think things are in a certain way. Feel free to disagree, but please provide arguments for your opinion. Don't just say, oh, no, that's wrong. Okay, why is it wrong? And this way you can help create a better community, provide answers for other people. It's fine that we disagree as long as we keep it respectful. So, not to make this extremely long, the length of rope that I think is best to choose is about twice the span of your arms. You will hear a lot of times of standard rope sizes like 7-meter long rope or 8-meter long rope, and the reason being that if you buy it from someone who makes rope, obviously they cannot spend every minute of every day calculating the size of twice your arm span and trying to cut that into, they just can't do that. You will, except for decorative bondage, if you want to do like shibari, especially in suspension, you are always going to use, I'm sorry, my rope is tangled. It's actually not my rope, it's my partner's rope. We kind of use it together. So this is actually cut to his span of arms, which is obviously a lot larger than mine. If you're going to do suspension or anything other than decorative rope bondage, you're going to always use like the rope folded in two. It adds strength, and it also doesn't cut that much into skin, which is really important if you're going to have pressure on a part of the body. Having this basically relieves the pressure. So this is obviously, well, it's not, they're not lying flat against each other, which they should be doing, because I'm only using one hand now. So this is obviously going to put a lot less pressure on the body and the muscles and the nerves and everything else than this. That's the reason why we always use the rope folded in two for anything that might put pressure on the body. If you're gonna do like the Karada model, which is basically the diamond tie that goes like this, you're gonna be using like the rope not folded, just the rope itself. But for most other ties, you're gonna be using it like this, folded in two. So that would be actually the length of the rope would basically be 4 times the span of your arms. Now, the reason we use this size, I know that people, I think I should mention this, I know that people that come from a martial arts background tend to use 10-meter length rope or 15-meter length rope. The reason being that in martial arts, you need to be a lot more functional and quicker if you want to immobilize someone in rope. So you don't want to spend time like connecting the ends of the rope, so you want to do one tie with one rope and be super efficient and extremely fast. Most other people will use dimensions of rope that are basically 4 times, if you're going to use it folded in two, 4 times the length of their arms. The reason being, and I'm going to do a stupid little tie now, which is absolutely, let me just do this. This is by no means a tie, so I'm just doing this for demonstrative purposes. The reason being as follows. If I want to have to, which you're often going to have to do, pull the rope through some other rope, you want to be doing basically a pretty smooth move. You don't want to have, see, look, you don't want to have to be doing something like this, which is extremely anesthetic and unpleasant, like this. That doesn't look good. It takes a lot of time. It will probably annoy your bunny. If you're doing self-suspension, it's the same thing. If you've been hanging by a leg or by a hip harness for 10 minutes, let's say, you don't want to spend a lot of time. Like, that's probably going to double the time of your suspension if you're going to just keep passing rope through. That being said, please do not start off by doing suspensions. I know that there are pretty pictures out there of wonderful models sitting graciously in suspension, but if you don't know what you're doing, you're really putting your partner and yourself, or if you're tying yourself, you're putting yourself at risk by doing that, because you need quite a lot of knowledge to be able to do that. And unless you're confident in floor work, which means tying without having anything suspended, please do not start. For the sake of your partner or yourself, do not start doing suspension. It can be extremely dangerous, and I'm going to get to that in another episode. So this was about the length of rope. Again, this is not a universal answer. Like, if you feel more comfortable using longer ropes, use longer ropes. This is just sort of a practical advice to be more efficient in your tying. I've also heard of people that pick the lengths of their ropes according to their bunnies, and I use the term bunny because I personally like it. I understand if it's not a preference for you. I know some people feel offended if they're called rope bunnies. I like it. I don't think that picking your rope length according to your bunny is quite that wise, considering the fact that you can gain a lot of knowledge by tying a lot of different people. That doesn't mean you have to have relationships with these people or anything sexual in nature. It just means that you get to do a lot of practice. And obviously, if you're gonna pick the length of your rope according to one model, the next model that comes along is gonna have a different breadth of shoulder and chest and hips, and nothing's gonna match. So you're gonna be used to doing a tie in a certain way, and all of a sudden you're gonna wake up with too much rope left over or not enough rope, and everyone in the bondage community everywhere knows that this is like the most annoying thing that can happen to a rigger. You're almost done with your tie, and then you need about this length of rope, and the rope is just done. There's no more. And you think, oh, damn it, what am I gonna do now? You have to connect another like 7 or 8 meter length rope for just this much, which is super annoying. So yeah, it's very helpful to have the length of rope catering to your body, the person who ties, rather than to the body of the person you're going to be tying, because that can vary wildly. Obviously, if you just choose to tie one person, then it's perfectly fine if you cut the rope according to their body and go by that. Then it's absolutely wonderful. The thickness of rope that you should choose, again, it's not a universal answer, so there's no real recipe for that. You should communicate with your rigger and tell them if you feel that the rope is cutting too much into the skin, maybe you should try thicker rope if they're willing to try that with you. From what I know from larger models, they tend to complain that incredibly thin rope cuts into their skin very badly, and it causes a lot of cuts and bruises and a lot of unpleasantness. You don't want to be using too thin a rope on a larger model, and you don't want to be using too thick a rope on a thinner model, because a skinny thin model with a lot of bulky large rope is going to look disproportionate. So you want to look at the aesthetical aspect and the proportions. For a larger model, it's going to look more pleasant if the rope matches her body and it looks like, you know, a whole, rather than, you know, just really thin pieces of rope. Again, if you are a guy doing self-suspension, or if you're someone who is tying guys, again, you don't want to be using like too thin ropes. Too thin of a rope, it's going to look really out of place. Communicate with the rigger. Tell them if you think that the rope they're using is very unpleasant for you in a way that it shouldn't be. Just tell them, maybe we should try a different size rope. Or if you're a very skinny model and you think that, you know, the rope is just too much, it's covering too much of your body, you feel uncomfortable with it, you tell them, listen, I'm willing to try thinner ropes if you have them. This, which I'm usually tied with, this was originally about a 6 millimeter, but after being used and treatment and stuff, I would say it's about a 5.5 millimeter at this point. I have been tied in ropes as thin as 4 millimeter, but I do not recommend that. So that was extremely unpleasant and uncomfortable. It cut into my skin horribly. It was just an experience I wanted to have. I tried it out. I was about this far from the floor because we didn't want to take any risks of me falling flat on my face in 4 millimeter rope. So you can go as thin as that, but I wouldn't recommend it. I think that the best would be about, for a skinny model, you should go for like 6 millimeters. For a larger model, you know, 7 millimeters or maybe even higher, but just talk to your model and try to find a solution. And models, talk to your riggers and communicate and tell them what your needs are. The type of rope that you should be choosing. This that I use is jute. If you want to do suspension or just Japanese bondage, jute and hemp is just as good. Hemp has a wonderful feel to it and a wonderful smell, but from what I know, I've had a difficult time finding it. It's not as easy to find as jute. Jute tends to look a lot better if you're going to take pictures of the bondage, because it's got a very nice shine to it. It's really shiny, but it's a bit more stiffer to handle than hemp. Hemp tends to be a lot more flexible, and you can work with it better. But as I told you, I have personally found it more difficult to buy. You could also use cotton rope. Cotton rope is absolutely wonderful because you can dye it in all sorts of colors and it looks absolutely fabulous. This, as you can see, has a color within itself. So if you're trying to find like you're going to try to apply a true red to this kind of rope, you're not going to get a true red, or you're going to get it very difficultly and with a lot of effort. With cotton, obviously you can dye because cotton is white. It looks wonderful. The problem with cotton ropes is that it tends to be elastic. So if you want the tie to hold its shape, or if you're going to do suspension, be prepared for that. It's not impossible. I've seen people tying with cotton. I've seen people doing suspension with cotton. It's just a lot more difficult. You're going to make your life more difficult, and you need to take certain aspects into consideration if you're going to be using cotton. Synthetic rope, I never recommend it. This is a personal preference of mine. I know that there's a lot of people that do absolutely stunning work with synthetic rope, but there are people who know what they're doing. The problem with synthetic rope is that it tends to heat up very fast. So when it comes into contact with skin, if it's pulled too fast across the skin, it can cause something that's called rope burn, which is basically the skin being heated and bruised and torn apart. I've had a rope burn here on my hand. This is another mark, but I've had it here, and it took about 2 months to fully heal. And I know people who have to this day permanent marks on their body due to synthetic rope being used by people who did not know very well what to do with it. So that's why I would not recommend synthetic rope, especially if you're going to do dynamic bondage with a lot of movement and you want to be passionate and pull the ropes and move your partner about. Then just don't, in my opinion, don't use synthetic rope. If you have experience, if you like the look or the feel of synthetic rope, it's okay to tell your partner, please, let's try and use synthetic rope, but do be careful. And tell them if they're pulling the ropes too fast across, you're gonna feel it immediately. It hurts like hell. And tell them, listen, please stop. You're really hurting me right now. I can feel this. Yeah, so this would be about it for the first for the first episode. I hope to be back soon with something else. Comment below if you have any kinds of questions. I would love to help you out, and please remember to not be rude. Just be nice, ask whatever question you have, and I will try to help you out and post another video with the answer if I have it. So yeah, see you around, guys. Bye!